Welcome back to Switch to Linux. So today we're going to have a look at something interesting. As you may have noted from my very first tinfoil hat time episode, it was Microsoft privacy concerns that caused me to switch to Linux to begin with. And in light of that, I wanted to address a few of the articles because if you follow the tech news, there's actually a few different Microsoft articles in the news right now about a couple of similar related issues, but some issues that were a little bit different. And needless to say, as far as Switch to Linux is concerned, I laud Microsoft's intent in what they're trying to do. I'm worried that it might be a public thing, but I just don't know. However, I'm going to make the final point at the end, what I want to say. But for now, suffice it to say, we are going to have a look at the issues, two different issues here. One of those is that when a government agency issues a request from a tech company for data related to any particular user, they almost always come with gag clauses, in which case that means that the organization is required to turn over the information but not inform the person who is the subject of the warrant. And what Microsoft is trying to allege is that it is, while there are a few justifiable reasons to restrict a person from knowing they're being looked at, for the most part, the majority of these requests, it doesn't make any sense to do that. And so in that respect, what Microsoft wants to be able to do is they want to overturn these gag orders that the government is frequently putting on these requests. So what causes this to be an issue to begin with? Well, with everything moving towards cloud-based everything, now we are putting a lot more of our private data into the hands of individual companies. And that is something to keep in mind. And this is the reason why I like and support the Linux platform so much, because not only does the operating system do what we anticipate it to do, but also a lot of the applications we can still use are also doing the things that we are anticipating. In other words, let's grab some over there. In other words, as the software we're using, if I'm using something like LibreOffice or any basic other Office type program, WPS or anything else that's out there, all of the files are stored locally. But if I'm doing something on Office 365 or if I'm doing something on Google Docs, a copy of that document is stored in the cloud. Now, I'm not saying that everyone's doing all these bad things. What I'm saying is that we have, in America at least, some privacy, or we should anyway, and we can, the government can't just come and go into our house and start searching around things without a search warrant. And if they execute a search warrant, we generally know it's occurring. And what Microsoft is trying to say is that we want to inform users under the majority of cases if their information is being looked at. But of course, all sorts of companies have all sorts of information about us, including health trackers have health data, which is kind of scary in and of itself. And then, of course, you have Facebook has like every bit of data. You have to give in everything, including your mother's maiden name, and that's why you should never use that as an answer to any security question, because it's too easy to see who you're linked to, and it's too easy to see who your mother's maiden name is now, thanks to Facebook, where most people are putting their maiden names in there in addition to any names that they currently have. And so you have that issue going. The next thing that you have going for you is you have Microsoft, Google, Yahoo with all of these email items. But we're going to get to that email item in a little bit. And then you have QuickBooks is now having they're moving most of their systems to online. Of course, you have FreshBooks is another online small business accounting tool. Now all of your budgets and all of your information is online. And so what is happening is, if we're not careful, we're putting pretty much our entire life on the internet. And now, it's susceptible to hackers, or B, it is susceptible to individual warrants. And these warrants they're not just small little warrants. A lot of these warrants seem to be large data collection warrants, and we're going to look at those in a few moments here. But we're going to transition over, and I want to show you what the two articles are, or the three articles rather, we're going to look at. And then we're going to have a look at how many of these cases there actually are. So the articles, the same article, essentially the same data is printed in both Ars Technica and the Consumerist. And so once it appears in both places, it certainly is an article that you might want to check out. And so basically the title here is Department of Justice says Microsoft isn't harmed when it can't tell users what data we want. So in other words, Microsoft wants to inform the users when they get one of these requests that they're asking for user data. And so in their complaint, which is actually backed by several large tech companies, in fact, I believe Apple had a co-authorship on at least one of the documents. The other tech companies that were interested in also looking at this case, you had Microsoft, Apple, Google, Dropbox, Amazon, Salesforce, and they said among others. Of course, Twitter was one of the ones who actually violated the GAD clause and alerted people that request for information was being sought. And of course, we're not saying that there's not a place for it. Even Microsoft allowed for that. So this portion of the article here, there may be exceptional circumstances when the government's interest in investigating criminal conduct justifies an order temporarily barring a provider from notifying a customer that the government has obtained the customer's private communications and data. But Section 2705B sweeps too broadly. The antiquated law, passed decades before cloud computing existed, allows courts to impose prior restraints on speech about government conduct. The very core of the expressive activity in the First Amendment is intended to protect, even if other approaches could achieve government objectives without burdening the right to speak freely. The statute sets no limits on the duration of secrecy orders and permits prior restraints any time the court has, quote, reason to believe, end quote, adverse consequences would occur if the government were not allowed to operate in secret. Okay, so, and of course the Department of Justice comes back. They first wanted the case completely dropped, citing that Microsoft cannot bring a Fourth Amendment claim on behalf of others. Of course, that is an illegal search, I think. I believe that is the case. And then, of course, there's been some back and forth on this, and I believe that they are, let's see, they're going to hold these on Monday, they said, and I think this article was done, let's see, this was done on the 23rd, which was Monday. So I'm guessing that this article, this article did predate those, so I'm not sure what the final outcome was, or maybe this was updated with that. Of course, Consumerists picked up on this in the afternoon. So let's see, they might actually have more information. So this is the same article information here. And each one of these has a little bit of different information. Here's the Electronic Communications Privacy Act, Stored Communications Act. Okay, so basically here, the ECPA still requires law enforcement to obtain a warrant, subpoena, or court order to search remotely stored data. However, the law does not require that the data notify the owner of the data about the search and only prohibits Microsoft and other companies from telling the affected users if the government has, quote, reason to believe that disclosing the request might hinder an investigation. And in other words, well, what Microsoft is coming out and saying is that they're requesting this too frequently, and that becomes the issue. All right, so let's see here. Okay, so last night, in advance of today's hearing on this motion, Microsoft filed one last reply acknowledging that the Supreme Court has held as a general rule that Fourth Amendment rights, quote, may not be vicariously asserted, end quote, on behalf of another party. At the same time, the SCOTUS conceded that there are special circumstances which this would be allowed. All right. And so if you read through these articles here, what you are going to find, let's see if there's anything else down here. Okay, so Microsoft lawsuit has been supported by many big names. We've already mentioned that. Apple, Amazon, Twitter, Google, and they said dozens others here, so a little bit different list. All right. So basically what's going on here is that Microsoft wants to have that right. And I'm sorry, I did not actually follow up on this enough to know if anything was issued. I believe that since neither of these were updated, I think that the information, the cases may have been heard, but I'm guessing decisions have not been made. Now, there is a win for Microsoft in the middle of all of this. Oh, hold on a second. Oh, yeah. Kitty Cameo. He wants to come back up and say hi. Hello, kitty. You say hi to people? Say meow? Can you say meow? Say meow? No? Okay. Kitty cat cameo. All right. Well, the kitty cat's about to steal a show here, so let me just show the kitty cat because everyone likes the kitty cat. All right, bud. This cat here, let's see if I can get this cat to do the cuteness. Okay. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. We got it. We got it. We got the cuteness. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Check this out. Oh, yeah. He just loves these pen caps. Oh, come on. Come on. Play with that pen cap. Ooh. Oh, yeah. We were definitely interrupted by a kitty here. So he likes to get it into his mouth, and then if he gets it into his mouth, he'll actually jump off the chair with it. Oh, he's just chilling right now. He doesn't really want to play. Oh, no, maybe. Yeah. Yeah, what do you think? Okay. All right, well, let's get back to the show. All right, Kitty has indeed stolen the show, but we'll get back to it here. All right. What, you see the doggy too, huh? You see the doggy on the screen? Yeah. Let's do a close up on the kitty. There you go. Here you go, kitty. See? Yeah. Say hi to everybody. Now, he's got this cuteness thing going on right now. He's got the paws going. Look at that. Oh, yeah. He's so cute. All right. Anyway, let's go ahead and get back to this. All right. So, the win for Microsoft is there have been another debate in the middle of all this about United States government asking to have information from Outlook.com accounts. And if there's actually an Outlook.com account is the only Microsoft account. No, actually, I think I still have an account somewhere linked to an Xbox somewhere. But other than that, I don't have Microsoft accounts, but I had a Hotmail account since before Microsoft owned Hotmail. And so I still have some of those. But the thing is that the Hotmail account data is actually stored in, or Outlook.com account data, I'm guessing they're the same. They're actually stored in Ireland, I believe. And so basically what's going on here is an appeals court basically said that no, since Microsoft is storing all of this data overseas, they have no obligation to hand over that data. And so there's been some information going back and forth, and this has been a final rule for Microsoft that well, on the one hand, yeah, they still can't tell people if information is being requested, but if the information being requested is specifically dealing with an Outlook.com account, that information is all stored overseas, and so the courts have ruled that Microsoft does not have to hand that over. So that is a win. So how many of these cases are there? Well, Microsoft does aggregate all this data and report it. So that's actually good. So first one is the basic law enforcement request, and this is just United States. There were a total of 5,168 total requests, and I think that this was just 2016, January through June 2016. But in those 5,168 requests for information, that covered 13,755 different accounts. In other words, different people or otherwise different accounts. And then the pie chart here tells us the information. So the 56% of these resulted in only subscriber and transactional data. In other words, that would be what you'd call your metadata. 9.3% of these cases resulted in actually giving out the real data on your system. No data was found for 16.85% of the requests, and Microsoft rejected 17.4% of the data. Again, that is 2016 from January to June. Now, globally, on a global level, there were 35,562 requests made of various law enforcement agencies, and that covered 60,372. And you'll see that in 65.9% of the cases, metadata was handed over. Only 2.65% resulted in real data. 18% had no data found. Those are us Linux people, you know. And then... which might actually correspond to the people on Mac plus Linux. Shocking. Let's think about that. Of course, the other statistics is the national security data. So here is Microsoft's national security reports data. And so you can see that this goes back to 2011. So the first column here is the orders seeking disclosure of content and the actual number of accounts impacted. So you'll see that the actual requests for... the individual requests have went down essentially since the Snowden releases. You'll see that those dropped. But you'll notice that the number of accounts impacted is actually, well, there was a little bit of going up, and then right around the time of Snowden, that dropped down a little bit, but it's still pretty high. 17,000 requests for information were sought by the NSA. And then, let's see if they actually had the amount of data actually sent out. Okay, so this is actually seeking actual content. The green bar is actually seeking content. The blue bar is seeking essentially metadata. So only about 500 requests for metadata. Clearly, they're more interested in the actual content. So what does that have to do with Linux? Well, here's the biggest problem. While Microsoft has a very noble goal, and it's great that they're fighting it, and it's great that they're bringing up these debates, because these do help in many other areas. Any of those accounts that we choose. For example, I shop on Amazon from time to time, and in fact, I'm pretty sure I have things on my shelf that Jeff Bezos himself has probably packed personally. Because I do know that he and his wife personally packed boxes in the early days of the company, and I want to say my account might go back as long as 1999. If you do the math on Amazon, that's within the first year or two it was around, I believe. But I have things that were ordered from Amazon really early. Including those really cool bookmarks you used to get anytime you ordered a book from Amazon. You used to get a cool bookmark. I wonder if those are collector's items. I don't know. But anyway, these accounts and these noble cases definitely impact all of us in the various accounts that we are putting data into. Let me kitty cam it for a little bit. All right. However, with all that being said... sounds good. He's stealing the show. You want to talk to? Oh yeah. What? Right here. See? There you go. Okay. He likes the pen caps most of all. Let's see if I can find another pen. Well, there's a pen. Okay. Anyway, with all these accounts, the best defense goes back to very best defense goes back to, if you remember the old movie Karate Kid Part 2. Mr. Miyagi is teaching Daniel-san how to do the drum punch, and he's on that fisherman's platform, that little thing. I don't even know what that thing was designed for specifically, but he comes down, and his infamous advice is best block, no be there. Okay, best block, no be there. Don't be there for the best block. The best way to make sure that your data is not being sent off is by, and it's not just by government requests. Government requests is just fine. If you think you're doing something wrong, stop doing something wrong. But hackers, we forget that all of this data collection is also susceptible to hackers. I saw today in another interesting news report that scared the bejeebers out of me that Target is now making, they're trying to make their own pay system. Really? Target? Really? Lord help us. I really hope that they learn their lesson about, putting the extra money to make sure your stuff is secure and up to date, But the best way we can prevent our data from being hacked or given out or whatever else, or even just stolen by some rogue company employee, or stolen for the purpose of maybe some employees bought out, and I'll tell you how easy that is. I mean, I used to do contracting for one of the absolute largest online academic group. With my administrator access, I could probably see, if you told me a name of your student in a college, I could probably get into the system and tell you exactly what their grades were. That's the level of access sometimes people have in these things. And in response to all of that, the best thing to do is to not have that data collected. And the problem is with most people on Windows 10, oh, what are you doing? He's a show stealer today, isn't he? With most people being on Windows and Windows pushing up to Windows 10 so frequently, then Windows is still collecting a lot of data. Even with all those privacy policies turned off, all those settings turned down, Windows is still collecting a lot of data. And I don't know what data is being collected, and people who study this stuff still don't know exactly what data is being collected. But they're collecting a lot of data. And the best defense is not to be there. And that is one of the best reasons you could use a Linux platform, because the Linux platform is not collecting a bunch of data. It's not collecting a copy of your files. It's not collecting any of that information. So that's really is the best way to go, is avoid all that information by simply using a platform that's not collecting random amounts of information anyway. Then, while Microsoft, it's great that they're doing this, because if they succeed in their case here, then the precedents will be set for other tech companies to, at least the idea is just to alert a user that their data is being looked at. And that's the important part. Alert the user that their data is being looked at. So as long as, that is the case, that is great. But it's even better if you can take steps to make sure your data is not online where at all possible. So that is what I have to say for that. So this is Tom and the Kitty signing off and saying,
I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.